Oh, did we forget to have something?
Hello and welcome to the Friday Games Review. I'm your host, Dan Galpin, and with me once again is Ian Nee Lewis, filling in for Ko Kim.
That's right. Ko's got very important work to do, so she's leaving us to drink beer and play games without her.
And speaking of games, there are 5 on today's list. Our crash-tastic physics puzzler, Spider Feeder.
That's right. You have to click the button.
Yeah. Deceptively simple Domino X4. Subliminally racist sorting game, Metro Rush. Unfortunately named Match 3 game, Booty Quest. And Spaceball.
And speaking of beer, I think it's definitely time to open some up.
Absolutely.
Wow, that was great. So we're experimenting with having a scripted opening, which for most of our shows has worked really, really well.
Yeah.
But this time, 2 issues. First, I finished writing the script at 3:02.
Yeah.
And second, Dan's sitting here like a jerk holding the button where I can't see it. And I'm like, the slides aren't even going. What's going on? Okay,
Exactly.
now back up because I have things to say. Speaking of beer. Okay, so today's beer is Green Flash Brewing Company's Double Stout Black Ale.
Excellent. Yeah. By the way, I can't go back to that slide because one of the really cool things, if you have the slide auto go forward, you can't ever go back to it ever again with the clicker. You have to.
No way.
Yeah, it totally prevents you from doing it. It sucks.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So yeah, I definitely need
That's
this.
right.
Definitely need this beer today. we
were going to spend thousands of dollars on teleprompting equipment.
Yes.
But then we were like, why not just use Keynote? We've got a Mac.
Have you guys noticed I'm wearing a green
Keynote
shirt?
needs a little bit of work by its one beta tester, I still think.
Nice. Right. Dan Pham, we were going to blame beer on him, but he says he didn't buy it. So
All
we
right.
actually don't know who did.
All right, stealing someone's beer.
No, I am actually wearing a Green Flash shirt, but I did not bring that beer in, although I will vouch for it. It's a great double stout.
Yeah. Well,
Excellent.
I definitely liked their IPA, which I think was called Palate Wrecker.
That's a great name for an IPA.
So you'll notice that we're broadcasting today in space.
Yes, exactly.
Let us know what you think about this because there have been haters.
Yeah?
I'll tell you, we put this black background up because we thought it looked, kind of boss.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, look, it looks really, really good when you guys have the lab coats. Actually, I like,
Yeah,
that's right. And by the way, and the reason I'm wearing this hoodie is partially just so I can contrast a little bit more against the black background.
We put up a massive, massive hair light just to catch the highlights off your majestic dew.
Yeah, the highlights off my skull. That's always good.
We have a comment already. Obi-Wan droid.
Obi-Wan droid. Nice. All right.
Sweet.
Well.
All right, so we don't have a producer today, but engineer Dan's going to be watching the comment stream because we're too lazy to make him do very much work. In fact, today is the end of the quarter for us. We've been working on performance reviews, which for me means putting it off, and Dan Galpin means, once again, writing a great review for me in the attempt yet again to get me promoted because
Absolutely.
I am the Susan Lucci of Android developer relations.
It was mostly that we have all of our reviews are due at exactly 11:59 and 59 seconds last night, and I was there until 11:59 and 59 seconds still making comments. So and then I was filing bugs after that. So it's been a long night, and so it was a great time to go. We were very excited about getting to this crop of games because I really needed some distraction from all of this.
And I'm hungover. So
exactly.
Let's go ahead and take a look at our first game. Oh wait, we can't.
No, the first game is Booty Quest. We can look at Booty.
Okay.
I know, I have them. Yeah, you see the order.
That's right, because in the script, I just put them in the order that their names were funniest.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and take a look at. I can't believe you put Booty Quest first.
All right, well, it was Talk Like a Pirate Week last week, so and Booty Quest. It's a shame you guys can't hear the audio because the audio for Booty Quest, we can bring this up now. The audio for Booty Quest is actually kind of epic. It really just has lots of great pirate stuff in it.
Yo,
and I love their listing page. This is actually a really, really good way of doing a listing page. They have the text is a great size. It's very, very readable. You know immediately this is going to be a match 4 Jewel game. It's got some great characters in it. My only looking at the actual listing, my only thing I would want them to change would be the icon, because I see no reason to have a giant rounded corner thing when you've got this really cool bird character that you could totally have pop. And in fact, out of the only icon I really liked out of all the games was Spaceball. We can continue to go on this though. All right, so let's get to the actual Booty Quest. Why does it say Metro Rush? Wait, we'll stay in Booty Quest. Better.
Okay, now you go to the next one.
Oh, I screwed this up totally.
Yeah.
All right, and one other problem. We have to actually plug the tablet in. So let's.
do?
Yes, we do, because the tablet's not
What?
plugged in. That's
But
why
there's
it's
two.
I know. There's 2 inputs, but we're not actually taking advantage of that. So
Seriously, why did I spend all the money on that?
I know. Hey,
You guys saw it.
We do. We totally do. All right, let's plug this in and let's actually get in. Come on, let's actually get into Booty Quest. Everyone's like, all right, we're tuning out right now. These guys are jokesters, man.
Actually, knowing our audience, this is probably when everybody's gonna tune in.
Absolutely, they'll be like, oh, this is so cool. These guys. All right, so a couple things to note here on Booty Quest. First of all, there's some really nice effects. The game has got actually really great graphics, and when we are playing it in HDMI mode, we've got this giant green line on the right-hand side of the screen, which is really kind of sad.
Are you serious? That's not us. That's actually
that's actually the game itself.
Nice.
So everyone really on Android, you have to always make sure that your game really does need to do something reasonable when you're at 1.33 aspect ratio all the way up to 1.77. It's like, and also you can't just look at the size that's coming back from the display, because you actually have to look at the size of the screen that you're given. And sometimes, so this may actually be that problem. That's a really common thing to go on with games, is people say, hey, let's pull the size of the display, let's ignore the view that I'm actually given, assume that I'm asking for full screen, and I'm just going to get the whole thing. You just cannot
you won't always.
You can't do that. You're not always going to get the full screen, especially on these tablets. Although we did actually make a change. The original Honeycomb tablets would actually give you the full screen size, and that screwed everybody up. They're like, wait.
Yeah.
So in order to make things slightly easier, we do only give you the window now that you're going to render in, but if you're plugged into HDMI, you're still not going to get all of that.
All right, so now let's go over to engineer Daniel, who's waving his arms frantically.
Oh, is he? He's like, no one can hear you, Dan. Your audio is completely cutting off.
I'm actually just interested in trying some of that beer.
Oh,
I see.
It is really good.
It is.
And boy, did I need it
very
today.
Good beer. Yeah. I know. By the way, we're gonna do a short show today, because 2 of these games crash and 4 of them suck. So
that's not true. I wouldn't go that far. Actually, only one of them crashes on both devices. One of them actually only runs on the phone. We are going to switch to the phone just to be nice and show that one off.
Do you see why Dan gets promoted and I don't? Because he doesn't say things like your game sucks. I love you, Dan.
Mostly because I write really great reviews.
That's true, it's amazing.
Yeah. And I'm sorry it says Metro Rush. This really isn't Metro Rush. This really is what do you call it? The game is fun. I mean, honestly, I like Match 4 games. There are better
Match 3 games.
Match 3 games. We called it. I don't know why I refer to it as Match 4 game. It's a dual matching game. It's really, really well done. The animations and transitions are smooth. There's some special things going on. There's explosive gems. The thing is, this category is so full. There are so many dual matching games on Android that you really need.
This is a great example of a dual matching game.
It is.
Yeah, there are a lot of them.
I mean,
you know what? Let's take it on its own terms.
Absolutely.
I like the animation is great. I love that it's got a little bit of reactive physics. When things get removed, it feels like they're kind of blowing up, and when they fall down, they're getting, there's definitely some math going on here, and I love that.
Yeah, and
it feels so professional.
Absolutely, the game is just really, really fluid, and it is really actually fun to blow things up with the gems. So definitely my hat's off in terms of game. I would say the only thing is in terms of depth, there are some super, super deep matching games out there with all sorts of different scenarios that are really complicated, and there's even like one of the ones we actually looked here, which was Rise of Atlantis, actually takes you through this epic quest as you go through the with all sorts of different side things going on. So this is a really, really full category, but this game is very good. I mean, I see no reason why it wouldn't be a candidate for being featured. It does reasonable things in terms of the handling of the back key. One of the things that but not everywhere. like for example not here. But one of the things it does not actually do is it does not correctly target multiple displays, so we still have the compatibility zoom button available. It's not targeting a new SDK version, so we still have the menu showing up, and we're still having like JNI compatibility stuff thrown in. So there's a couple things I liked in the change. I'd also like to make sure that they're actually correctly targeting the screen.
Yep, great stuff. So let's go ahead and talk about Metro Rush. So yeah, Metro Rush. I found it interesting. At first I couldn't actually figure it out.
Yeah,
and then when I did figure it out, I found it a little bit disturbing.
The fact that you're sorting different colored people into different colored cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's regular mode, as opposed to, I don't know, South Will Rise Again mode. I don't know. So we get this train, and you'll notice the train has a very small little green thing. So now, we got to sort all the green people into the cars.
Yeah, and I think it's supposed to represent the route that they're going on, but it just so happens that as you're playing it, all the green people look a lot alike. Now we're orange.
And the orange people.
Yeah, and they all have a different race. I don't know why that's the. I mean, it's
orange.
Oh, there we are. We do have two.
He was orange. Yeah.
Yeah. But it is sort of interesting. It does.
That's cool. The orange guys are like Irish, I think. I don't know.
I think you're right.
I guess so.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of one thing about this, a couple things about this game. One is that it definitely needs sort of an intro to be like, what am I doing here?
Right.
It is kind of weird if you miss the train, they just kind of stand on top of the train, which I kind of liked.
Yeah. So it's a little buggy.
Yeah.
And let's face it, this mechanic has been done before. It's been done better. Witness. I call up the.
My favorite thing is this at the bottom,
game.
like the five guys that are all like standing atop each other at the bottom of the screen. But yes, it is a little buggy. The other thing
you remember that bathroom game where they had the first there were men and women, then there was like dogs, and there was androids, and you had to sort them.
Yes,
that was a good sorting game. This game, I mean, maybe if you're 3.
Well, and I'll say some other things to note. You can see that there's a real problem with this particular screen size and resolution. You can see the retry button and the quit button are really squashed. Mm-hmm. And this actually goes. We've even brought.
Now, to be fair, this isn't an easy resolution. It's not a common resolution, a common aspect ratio.
Yeah, it's just the resolution used by every single Android tablet out there.
No, this isn't because.
Oh yeah.
This one.
In the
HDMI mode.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, but even outside of HDMI mode, it's still squashed.
Well, what I'm saying though is that the particular aspect ratio that we're looking at is extremely squashed because we're in HDMI mode, and it's a little bit weird.
But let me point one thing out here. Okay, sorry, go on. So this is actually their listing. And the listing also has a completely squashed and different aspect ratio from the actual game.
Well, my point really is that, phones are getting longer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Aspect ratios change. There is no device on the market that I'm aware of that will guarantee always being the same forever.
Yes.
With Android, the nice thing is that at least we've thought about that and gone through the pain so that you can we have a new rule, right? No static slides for more than 5 seconds.
So anyway, let's go back. But I just wanted to show that because it was sort of entertaining. And I did want to actually mention that this is also not a particularly good listing page. It doesn't.
No, it's not.
But it is representative of the game, at least, which is good. There's a lot of listings that aren't. But
anyway, to be fair, what I was trying to say is Android gives you the tools to deal with these aspect ratio changes. And especially when you're doing vector graphics, there really shouldn't be any reason to make these mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay, now I've said my piece.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah, Dan, I'm going to shut up now.
So I have a really important question from someone in the YouTube.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. Important.
The question is, how can you play with beer?
How can we not play with beer?
Yeah, I think that's a harder.
Have you tried this game? Don't do it in a dry county. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much says it all. There's some good ideas here. It definitely needs to feel more fluid. My basic complaint with this game is it is actually, and I think part of it is the aspect ratio. I think it is having trouble dealing with touches and with handling the characters on this particular screen.
Yeah. Also just when you're doing a sorting game like this, and I'll tell you what the main problem is with the mechanics. Because let's talk about the things they did right? Okay, they did vector graphics. The vector graphics look really good. So those turned out well.
Yeah, they did. They're high. I think they're high-res Illustrator graphics that have been rendered. They're not. I don't think they're actually vector here. I think they've just been rendered into bitmaps. But yes,
possible. The basic game idea, there's nothing wrong with it. I would say that the interaction is a little difficult. A sorting game like this, you probably want to have a little bit of momentum physics so that it doesn't turn into a laborious dragging game where you're fighting the interface more than you're fighting the game.
And that I was going to say is on a phone it's not so bad because you don't have to drag as far, but as soon as you get to a tablet, if you don't actually have the physics built into it, then you really are just be like, oh, I'm dragging this thing across the screen again and again.
And you saw how many times Dan made this same mistake. You let go just a fraction of a second too early, and instead of getting in and giving you points, dude just, you hit a bug basically.
Floats to the
guy
top.
Just sits on top of the train looking weird.
It's really great when the train then takes off and runs them all over, by the way, which it does do, but there's no like running over scene.
I guess
okay.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is some great programming. No question about it. It's not finished.
Yeah.
It's not a finished game.
Yeah, it needs more work.
All right, let's move on.
All right, so our next title in all of this, and let's go back to this was the fun one for us. This is a game that we actually were unable to get to run on any of our devices.
Can't even tell you how much I wanted to play this game.
Yeah, we were excited. We're like, well, actually, looking at the listing, we weren't particularly excited.
No, I was really stoked. I watched their video. It looked good.
Oh, okay. Looking at the listing, I wasn't sure. You can see that if you had this on a device, you would never be able to read the text. It's just. I mean, I can't read it from here, which is I can read the title barely.
And part of the problem too is that they haven't differentiated the title and the tagline. Like if you look at, let's say, a movie poster, the title is big, the tagline is small. It's a good tagline, as taglines go.
The spider is hungry.
You have to feed it.
You have to feed it.
Okay. But instead, it's like spider feeder, the spider hungry, you have to feed it. It doesn't look like a listing. It looks like a meme.
Yeah. So this game failed to load because it couldn't actually get a class that it needed, which caused its main class to not load. So all we're going to have is a green scan. I will show you what happened. I will launch it here, and you'll get. Unfortunately, spider feeder is stopped, which is very sad.
So what class was it?
Unfortunately, it's when you have a class that is from the main activity class, it prevents the main activity class from loading, but you can't see what it is. Because you just see, the main activity class failed to load because one of the things it's depending on wasn't there. So
you should be able to see there's like the really long listing, and you get down to the bottom. It
depends on where it crashes. Unfortunately,
did you S-trace it?
Yeah, I did not S-trace it. So this was I just used logcat on it.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't have gotten much out of it.
With S-trace, unfortunately, this is all deck stuff. So S-trace would just let me know it was trying to load a file. S-trace is really cool though. If you're trying to debug native stuff, it's actually really, really useful to know which call your app made that caused things to crash. So definitely thumbs up on S-trace. We actually made a nice update to it, to that tool in the last 6 months. So if you haven't used it recently,
check that out.
Oh yeah, we're very close to being able to install Jelly Bean on our little Transformer Prime here, which is very exciting. And I'm hoping it'll work because that'll be fun. But I didn't want to do it right before the show, just in case something went wrong.
How could that happen?
Yeah, exactly.
That would be really surprising.
It'd be shocking. So. The next app we're going to actually look at is Domino X4, and this game is a really beautifully done.
Was I right? Is this a deceptively simple game?
It is.
It just seemed like I hadn't even played the game. It just I was writing the script and I'm like, dominoes. I bet it's deceptively simple.
Yeah, this is actually really fun. It's a puzzle game. It's a time-based game. Here's what the listing looks like, which is actually pretty good. It's pretty representative of the game. You see, we actually get some nice because it's got green on it. We're getting some green screen showing through with our little presentation here. So, yeah, you can see us behind there. And I would still like the text to be slightly larger. And you know what? That font I've never liked. For this kind of thing. But it's fun.
Yeah. Well.
But it's everyone's taste. However, we actually get to the game itself, and I'll launch it here on the tablet, and you'll see why this game we're actually going to switch to the phone. First of all, menu looks fine. I mean, not exciting. The text you can see is kind of small. That's because we're ending up, and so is the Domino, and that's because we're on an MDPI device, and on these things just look huge on an MDPI device. So when you're actually looking at how do I make my app scale for the tablet, sometimes it makes sense to actually select a different resource type, and you can actually do that. So that's what's one thought here. We actually go to new game, and you can see.
Wow!
I know
it is deceptively simple.
Yeah, it's just not playable.
No, this is awesome. Oh my god! Best game or best game ever. How do I play it? What do we do?
So you rotate the dominoes, and as you can see,
oh my god!
Unfortunately,
it's like a Nyquist game.
Unfortunately,
this domino doesn't just affect itself, it affects dots in other dominoes as well.
So unfortunately what we're seeing here is that the matrix that's being used to scale the bitmap is just not correct for this screen size and resolution, and so we're seeing the dots, they're actually all overlapping each other, and a game is not
wicked cool.
Is not playable. But because we are trying to make sure that you guys can actually see how the game is played, we're now going to switch from the tablet view, you'll see us lose this momentarily, to our trusty Galaxy Nexus. All right, yes, excellent.
I love how we have this great on-screen animation. Everything looks really smooth.
Yeah.
But it's a result of you picking up a cord off the floor
Yeah.
and plugging it into something else.
And Daniel's
low-tech, high-tech.
I know, and Daniel's hard work. So here is Domino, and here's what it looks like. Now there are some rendering problems even on Galaxy Nexus. You can see that it's cut off. I'm not sure why this is actually the case, because it doesn't actually happen, but it happens.
At this point, I don't even know what I'm looking at.
Yeah, so what's actually going on here is you're seeing a couple of rendering problems. It's worse with the HDMI in, because you're getting a slightly different screen size there as well. If you actually get it full screen, it's less cut off. But as you can see, at least we can see the game to play it. So we can rotate the dominoes so that they line up, and the goal is to get bricks of dominoes that line up together. This is actually really hard to play with HDMI because I can't see that how many dominoes are how many dots are actually on each domino.
Right, so what do you think they're doing there?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I'd have to look at their layout. If I had a little more time, I would have actually tried to pull apart their layout and see why it's wrong.
Don't lean against that. God, how many times do I have to tell you?
It's so soft, though.
Yeah.
We've got a soft velvet background. This thing looks black, but it's actually black and squishy.
As soon as I get my glow-in-the-dark paints, Elvis, baby.
Nice. Actually, I'd like black light. That'd be kind of cool to do a black light episode.
That would be rocking.
Yeah, we should totally do that.
We should do a Halloween episode.
Yeah.
Since we're about to be swamped with zombie games.
That is true.
What made zombies a thing? Why are zombies such a big deal?
I think it was the zombie head that PopCap created for Plants vs. Zombies. I really do. I mean,
I guess.
They spend like $3,000 making this zombie head, and it becomes this viral video. I mean, it's like that in Gangnam Style, that's like what we're going to see at Halloween.
So it's safe to assume that neither of you guys have a zombie kit prepared at home, right?
I do actually. I have a zombie kit.
Okay, take
just
that.
in case of zombie invasion. I'm totally set. Except I don't have a shotgun.
He didn't make it for zombies, though.
No.
He made it for communists.
No, earthquakes actually. But it's earthquake/zombie invasion.
My parents had a communist kit.
Did they really?
Yeah, as soon as the invasion came.
The commie invasion. All right, so let's switch back to the tablet. I just wanted to show that. And actually, without HDMI, it was much more playable. So I'm kind of sad you guys can't see the game because it's actually really fun. You're actually matching different tetrominos together with the dominoes, and so it's actually a very clever game. When you
that's the Lemmings font.
It's totally the Lemmings font. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it's Cooper. No, it's Cooper. Cooper's the other plate. It's It'll come to me. I usually
copper plate.
It's not copper plate. No, it is. It's Cooper Black. That's right. It's not copper plate. It's Cooper Black. That's what it is. Yes. Ha.
Doesn't that totally sound like a whiskey or something?
It should be. Cooper Black. It'd be great to make a Cooper Black whiskey that actually had the font on the front. All right, so we're going to go to our final game, which is Spaceball.
Unlike the rest of these, we had no idea how to make a joke out of this name.
We're playing with balls, man. Oh, come on. All right, this one actually is our only landscape game. Yeah, Mr. Fam. All right.
on.
High five to our engineer, man. He's been kicking some serious booty going to.
We've got some real problems here. We've got like a much more professional setup, and yet we're not professional at all. Hey, what happened to the producer cam?
Yeah, where's the producer cam?
Did you put it over there?
I actually
We unplugged it.
I disconnected it so we could have both tablet and phone available.
Yeah,
for
we actually we have
But
all
then we
these
didn't
cameras,
do the-
but we don't have a power strip that we actually have that actually has a socket for it, so we can plug both in at the same time.
Yeah, I don't think the fire marshal would be too happy with our electronic setup.
Dude, don't say that. Look, there's a power strip on the floor over there. It's got nothing plugged into it at all.
That is actually true. There's several in this room.
Right.
It's completely
Besides,
safe.
Andy has a power strip over there that could probably handle like a nuclear reactor.
That thing is
So,
amazing.
yeah.
That is seriously kick butt. It's meant to power soldering irons and heat guns, and we have it here for powering laptops and phones.
Right.
All right, so Spaceball. First of all, I want to say
First of all, it's not Spaceballs, it's Spaceball.
it's Spaceball.
Right. It's
okay?
not a licensed property.
Yes, just in case you were curious, this is, even though it looks exactly and the font seems like, and actually it feels very cartoony, very much
Right.
like the movie, this has nothing to do with the movie unless I'm
Dude,
totally
I don't
mistaken.
think you're thinking about Spaceballs. I think you're thinking about NBA Jam.
So,
Okay, so there's a serious problem here, though. I mean, look at this. It's you're not going to be. Now, this actually, our new studio setup is really useful for this because we are actually about 10 to 12 feet away from a very, very small monitor showing this. And in terms of like arc radians, it's about the same size as what it would be on a phone held at
Yeah.
arm's length. I cannot make heads or tails out of this.
it looks like next to
Right.
the character, and the thing is, the real it would be fine at that size if there was more contrast. But
Yep.
right now, with the amount of contrast there is between the Spaceball logo and the back, it's actually very, very difficult to read.
Remember, the weirder your font, the lower your contrast, the bigger it needs to be in order to be legible.
Yeah, and it's such a great logo. I would really like to see that. You know, I'd like to see just a little bit more contrast between the text and the background. Other than that, great. This icon, by the way, wins the Icon Award of the Week, as I said
Hell
earlier.
yeah!
This
Rock
is
on!
what an Android icon should look like. Other game developers, take note.
Right?
Seriously.
Now, yeah, move on so I can see your
Yeah,
beautiful
other game
face there.
developers, take
Okay.
note. There we are. All
Yeah,
right.
otherwise he's going to mess you up. Look at him. He's
Yeah.
from the hood. That's why he's got a hoodie.
Absolutely, with antenna on it.
Can we both do hoodies?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, it kind of fits for this game. So you know, this game's got a little.
I'm that dude from Assassin's Creed now.
Oh, you totally are, man.
Right?
You're from the future.
I'll tell you you're.
And this isn't even your Assassin's Creed hoodie. You actually.
No, it's not. Yeah, I do have an Assassin's Creed hoodie. It's not nearly as good for playing Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Spaceball.
So Spaceball is a shooting game, and it's actually kind of a shooting gallery basketball game, which I thought was really
sound so-
cool.
You sound so disappointed. It's a shooting game.
It's a basketball shooting game, but you know it's well done, and it's actually really different. I like the little animations. There's not a lot of frames of animation, but they're there. Your goal is to line up the shot into the basket.
You've got to be kidding me. Oh my god.
And you get points for getting like runs. You don't want to get them into those things because you lose your ball. Now I'm screwed because I lost my ball.
What kind of highly advanced culture is responsible for this
I
madness?
totally screwed that up. So then you have to drop the ball, and now I've dropped it far away from him, so I'm screwed. As far as I know, I can't get it back.
What?
Yeah, I can't get it back.
What? Dude can't like walk over and just get it?
I don't think so. Maybe you can. I never figured that
How
out.
lazy are you, little purple dude?
I know. Well, I was trying to figure that
No.
out. Maybe
This is-
do you tilt? Oh, you tilt him!
Oh, look at that!
Ah, okay, there we are. I actually
Once
never.
again, totally flummoxed by an accelerometer.
Yeah, I know. Not to mention, we lost HDMI. By the way, we have the. I've decided I hate micro HDMI with a passion. I hope we never put it in products.
You realize that consumer connectors are not meant for this stuff.
I know. Okay, that makes the game way more fun. I was like trying to figure out. I'm sitting here playing with this on the desk, being like, "This game seems really not very dynamic."
So that's something that I'm not going to say that you're typical, but still,
No, I know.
it's always nice to add a little bit of discoverability.
Die, stuck ball. Ooh, that was cool. The stuck ball gave me a basket. So anyways, I actually think the game is really fun. I would like the accelerometer mechanic to be a little bit easier found, and I actually don't think this game needs an accelerometer. Games that have accelerometer where they don't really need one drive me nuts as a general rule. Now, maybe there is a way to change the controls. Maybe I can go back and if there's a way to say...
I mean, I think you could make the argument that, you need one hand for shooting and you're going to be better. But the problem is, too, is if you... Actually, no, I'm going to rant for a second. Mm-hmm. Here's the problem. When you're doing accelerometer stuff, that takes a hand. Mm-hmm. It takes at least one hand, and it feels better with two hands.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, let's say that you need to touch the screen in a specific place.
Yes.
Impossible. You know why? Because you're tilting the device all over the place. Do you see how hard I'm trying?
Well, it definitely makes it way. On a tablet, this game kind of sucks.
It's one thing
because of that.
It's one thing when you have a mechanic where there's a couple buttons on the side of the screen that you can get with your thumb while you're, twisting it around. Mm-hmm. But if you have to move your device and do any kind of precision touching, that's going to be frustrating for most of your users, no matter what kind of device they have.
Yeah, and the other thing is in general, accelerometer games on tablets, have to be really, really carefully thought through. So that would be my only comment is if you're going to do one, first of all, it's better to have multiple control options anyways. We've always shown that, that if you give people the options to have different controllers, they'll love you. If you don't, oh man, I totally want to get that 3x
Or even
score.
just simplify your control. I mean, do you really have to control the way this guy runs? It's pretty obvious where he's going to run to. Maybe you should think about making the mechanic a little simpler.
Making a mode where he just goes and grabs it. Although it is an iced, TNT. Lost. Oh, that was bad. Case. But I love the different game modes in the game. I actually really like the game is totally cool in the way it plays. I actually would like to see it not use an accelerometer because it's
really
janky.
Just the control scheme. And the graphics are nice, the animation's nice. Yeah. It's got a fun mechanic. It's not super deep, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I want to see higher res graphics. Admittedly, this
is the kind of game I can imagine taking to the bar, just like making some bets over, just kind of being trash talking with my friends. Oh man, I bet you can't make this many baskets or whatever. And
yeah, no, it's totally cool. I would love to see kind of a social. There is social stuff built into the game, but I'm sure it can be taken further.
Actually, I don't need social stuff built into the game because I have friends and we just have. I'm lying. I don't have any.
I say, come on, man. So it does have Gree built into it. I don't actually know if it enables any social modes because when I see these things, I'm like, I don't like fun.
Right.
So anyways, but Spaceball, I definitely would like to see some higher res graphics. It does look really blocky on a tablet. And on a phone, it's okay. But otherwise, the game does really well. It actually, for the most part, yields to our guidelines. Except here, we're hitting the back key. Doesn't
yields
do anything.
To our guidelines.
Yeah,
that is the best way I've heard of. It submits to our guidelines. It becomes our supplicant.
It does. I mean, meaning that as an Android user, you're mostly not going to be annoyed with it. Now, this is totally annoying. Come on, Gree, make the back key actually do something useful in your app. Seriously. Look at this. The only time I've seen the game crash right inside of Gree's stuff. What is up with that?
That's a perennial problem. And let's just remind everyone that although middleware gets things wrong all the time, it's your problem. If you put middleware in your game and it screws something up and you don't get featured because of that, don't write to us and say, oh, but it's my middleware. Can't I get a free pass? No, you can't.
Yeah, my middleware is the one that's grabbing everyone's phone numbers and saving them in an evil database so that overlords can contact you by SMS. No, man, it's your it's still your fault. That's I'm sorry.
Exactly. And the truth is, our hands are kind of tied, right? We can't take your middleware out. That's your decisions to take it out or put it in.
Yeah. Sorry. I was it with the Gundam style vibe. It's been a long week.
If you choose to put in middleware that doesn't work or that does something wrong, that's just as bad as putting programming a bug into your game. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at our live stream. Engineer Dan, what are the people saying out there?
We've got a bunch of different comments, but we do have a question from Owen.
Okay.
So Owen's asking, can you guys try to explain how to scale some of the art using matrices for different screen resolutions?
So there's a couple ways of doing it. I mean, if you're a view-based game, you can actually
You're using Canvas.
No. If you're a view-based game, like if you are one in which you're actually using custom views, you can use image view, you can use a matrix associated with that. You can actually, it's kind of nice. We give you a matrix that actually has multiple different kinds of transformations, and we actually give you a bunch of functions to allow you to create the matrix without understanding the matrix math, which is kind of cool.
It's 3x3 matrix, and if you don't understand the matrix math, you'll never be able to debug it.
Yes, that's true.
And the functions don't always work the way you think they should, and the moral of the story is learn math.
Yeah, and actually, if you go to, Ian has a really, really great code sample that he did, which is part of Android U, which is his custom view code sample, which actually goes through using matrix math to do a bunch of transformations, including rotation and scaling, right?
That's somewhat true. I had to cut it down a lot because people said, maybe it's a little too hard.
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't expect people to know math. I think that might have come. Yeah.
Yeah,
Ian had a much better example that used more math. Yeah.
But the important thing is, remember that a 3x3 matrix encapsulates pretty much any mapping between the 2x2 spaces, right? So for an XY coordinate system, 3x3 matrix, you can do translation, rotation, scaling, skewing, perspective, etc. And building that matrix is something that our functions will do for you, but concatenating multiple matrices together, also something that we'll do, but you need to understand how the math works in order to make sure that you're doing it in the right order. 'Cause, matrix multiplication, unlike most other types of multiplication, is non-commutative, which can really trip people up. Witness the incorrect math that was actually
in our OpenGL sample.
OpenGL sample.
Yes, exactly.
Which was a tricky one because there was not only bad math, but there was a memory overwrite that we didn't catch, which made it look like it was good math for certain conditions.
Yeah, it actually looked like it was doing something reasonable, which is always dangerous.
Best Stack Overflow question ever.
Yeah, totally.
And I have to say, by the way, Joe and I both wrote responses, and his was like, "Oh yeah, it's wrong. I'll fix it," and mine is like, "Well, here's how it's wrong. Here's the fix. Blah 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 blah." But he mentioned that he was the guy that wrote the sample, so his got accepted. I'm so bitter about that because my Stack Overflow reputation isn't exactly the best in the world. You could always go vote it up.
Exactly. Yeah, he's the man. Come on. He fixed the math.
The main thing is that you're applying a scale matrix to your bitmaps in order to fit them into a specific place. But it seemed like either the scaling was wrong or it was being applied in the wrong order because as you're rotating things, they were being scaled way out beyond the bounds of where we thought they should be.
So
I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Yeah.
If not, then sign on to office hours on Wednesday. You can ask us live.
And the other one more thing I like to add is that it's really important, since the matrix can do all those transformations, use the matrix for all of them. Don't try to say, well, I'm going to put this thing in a surface view and I'm going to try to set a scale factor somewhere else.
It's
rely on the matrix to do everything. One, it's really fast. And two, it actually will make your code a lot simpler.
Well, you got to remember too what's going on here, right? I mean, in the
telling
software,
people to rely on the matrix. I feel like I'm in a movie or something like that.
Dude, you're so old.
I know.
So the thing is, remember that obviously for software rendering this doesn't matter, but for hardware rendering, anything that's done using the matrix will be done by the GPU. I'm sure there are some exceptions to that, but that's a general rule. Whereas if you do something without using the matrix, it's a bit of a crapshoot. You don't know if you're going to get it or not. Now, there are some things that you need to be careful of. For instance, let's say that you draw a path and then scale it using the matrix. That will be very fast, but the quality will be low because GPUs aren't very good at drawing paths, so we draw the path in software and then scale it up or scale it down. which means one of my favorite things to do in the old system, which was to always draw paths in a 1x1 box and then scale it to whatever. No, don't do that. That would be a sad thing.
Yeah.
But for things that are already drawn, bitmaps, text especially, things that can be scaled and rotated by the hardware, make sure that you do that. Of course, it's a little bit more complicated than just using the canvas matrices. You also have to make sure that you're in a layer. And my class on doing custom controls in so Android developer.android.com/training, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Anyway, I have a class on doing custom controls, and it explains how to draw something to a layer so that you can very quickly rotate it and get buttery smooth graphics, even though the operation that you're doing is kind of expensive.
And the other guys who should look at his class actually are the guys who did the Metro Rush game, because his custom control actually talks about physics, and he actually has some very, very nice fling physics in that, and I think that would help the game out immensely. And you can actually use the built-in physics model you get with our gesture detector to do a lot of that.
Yep.
So,
and the other people who should look at my class is everybody. Because I need the page views. Come on.
It's
Daddy
true.
needs a new Tesla Model S. All right.
we need to get him promoted. It's very important.
All right. So
anything else in the live stream other than
Fam's like, hey, there's some comments. Oh, and here's something I'm actually going to read too.
Yeah.
Nice.
Here's what we can actually read on the air.
Right.
I'm not exactly sure if you guys answered Owen's question yet, but he posted a little bit of a.
We answered it poorly.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's say
I blame the stout.
So specifically, he says.
So it's just we don't know exactly what they did wrong in the Domino game. Is the problem.
Go on.
Anyway,
so he's saying, say you design your vector art in 480 by 800 res. Now you want to have support for large screen HDPI phones, say like 1200 by 600 resolution. He's looking for the technical details on how to scale that. I'm not sure if you guys addressed that in your explanation.
Okay, so there's kind of two different things. If your vector art, you're importing it as a bitmap.
If you import it, that's one really important thing. Are you doing it as vector, or are you?
No, he said bitmap. So
so he's going to author that. Okay.
Yeah. So in general is. Yeah. So in general, if you can actually display vector art in your game, then what we generally recommend is exporting a relatively high quality version of it and putting it in a higher density to start with. That helps the phones like the Galaxy Nexus that are XHDPI because you'll end up with getting high resolution artwork on there. Now the bigger question is how do I do the same thing on a tablet? There's a couple of different ways of doing that. One way you can do things, and this is fairly straightforward, is you can actually throw the artwork into a no DPI folder, and you can just try to select select a scale factor that makes sense. Don't rely on the system to scale it at all. You can also and then you run into one other problem on the very low end devices with memory. Because you're going to be loading in potentially much larger set of bitmaps than it's designed to take, which is part of the reason why we do all of the DPI-based loading that we do.
Right. You want to try and load whatever is close enough to your DPI, as closest to your DPI as possible, and the system's going to take care of that. Then what? So let me try and break down what we were talking about matrices, because Dan says matrix anytime he wants to sound smart. So here's what we're going to do. All you're going to do is scale this stuff. But the important thing is there's really two ways to scale a bitmap in Android. You can use a draw bitmap and give it a destination rect that's different from your source rect, and that will do scaling. Or you can draw it to a canvas at its original rectangle and apply a scale matrix to the entire canvas. And the problem comes when you mix them. Okay, so when you mix the two techniques, because applying the scale matrix to the canvas is applying it to each drawing operation. It's not a full scale. So what we were suggesting is that you pick the canvas size that you feel is native. So whatever you had in mind. Now remember, this isn't going to take care of aspect ratio. All right, it's going to take care of size. Now for aspect ratio, you need to make some other. Decisions. You may want to do a little bit of letter bothering. Move some some of your UI elements out further or something like that.
And the other thing that's a little tricky is on a tablet. So normally what Android does, if you have let's say an XHDPI resource,
right,
and you try to load it onto a tablet, which is an MDPI device, Android's automatically going to go, and it's going to squish that down, and it's going to make an MDPI size because its goal is it's trying to retain the physical size of that bitmap, which for a lot of actual non-game UI is very nice because what you really want on a tablet often is just to display more information. However, there's a balance. So what you can do is a couple of things. One is you can actually say, you know what, I'm on an extra large device, let's not use the DPI that is built into it. You can actually say, I'm on an extra large screen device, I'm going to make use of higher resolution assets. And you can actually set that and tell the resource loader actually go load me the next level up. The other thing you can do is if you're going to do that a lot, you can simply store your resources in a no DPI folder and then do some calculations yourself to determine how to scale. Because actually, if you look at what's going on inside of the resource loader, all of it's doing is it's telling the bitmap factory to scale. Now, one thing that's kind of nice that you can also do if you want to do it a little bit more optimally is that there's actually two ways in which on loading you can scale bitmaps.
Right. Well, but the thing is, I think when we were talking about the dominoes, and this is why I was going
the
matrix direction. Where I feel like we're sort of diverging into two different stories here. But the problem was not that. I'm sure he was loading the wrong resources, but it felt like the real problem was he was drawing the dominoes with one set of scale factors, and he was
drawing the dots with another set of scale factors.
Exactly.
And the other thing is that the dominoes.
So let's try and we've got the DPI thing, we got the matrix thing. Let's separate those and finish one or the other. So you talk about the DPI thing.
So for DPI, you've got kind of two problems that are fighting each other. You want to make sure that you make video memory still work on devices that have limited video memory. So you do where it makes sense to do what is going on with the standard transformations, it does make sense to use them or to simply apply similar ones yourself. The second thing is that you really want to make sure that on a tablet, if you want to display things bigger, that you do select larger resolution assets. And the easiest thing to do is simply to enumerate the kind of assets you have and select the right one. That's what a lot of game developers do.
Try to rely a little. The DPI thing too. If you're in the DPI folders, you can basically work in dips, right? You don't have to work in actual pixels.
That's correct. You can do all of your layouts in dips. The only problem with that is that obviously this thing has a much larger amount of dips. And so you're going to actually want to have different resources. People don't want to have like HDPI / extra large resources. That's actually the correct way of having different scaled resources, is to actually have separate bitmaps that are for tablets for HDPI and for phones for HDPI. And that just gets kind of messy. So in this case, in order to keep the image really small, in order to keep things relatively simple, you'll probably want to do a little bit of math just to make sure you get the right size images with the highest quality available for these MDPI tablets.
Right. So let's move on to that then. The way you could do it, especially if you're thinking in dips, right? So dips are sort of supposed to be related to physical units.
Yes. And they are actually.
Right. Well, yes.
They're related. They're not. They're not exactly related.
So the trick here is that a 4-inch phone and a 10-inch tablet may actually have the same number of pixels, but a different number of dips. So I think what we're suggesting is that you might want to go ahead and decide on a sort of native dimensions in dips, and then either expand or contract by setting a scale factor. Now, how do you set that scale factor? Well, you do it in the matrix of your canvas, and you make sure that for all of the elements that are supposed to be occupying the same physical space in your game board, that matrix needs to be the same. And the domino game is probably using one matrix for drawing the triangles and using another matrix for drawing the dots. And that's where they're running into problems.
I think so. I think that's exactly what's going on. I think actually it's probably drawing the triangles as based just purely on what's coming on the screen, and it's probably loading the bitmap images and making assumptions about the size of them, and then trying to scale those. That's my guess. We even saw on Galaxy Nexus with that device, with that game, that even going to HDMI and plugging that in made the game unplayable. So there's probably some calculations going on that are based on the display size rather than on the viewport size that's given as well. So there's probably a number of different issues. You have to really make sure that when the system tells you, no, rescale your viewport, you really have to go and redo those calculations.
Yeah, and that's very important as well. So you have to remember that you're going to be on a multitude of different devices, and this is actually where 3D games have a real advantage, because 3D games are sort of used to having to do viewport mapping, so you're mapping from your 3D world into what we call clip space. But 2D games a lot of times haven't had to deal with that unless you're coming from a background of games that were actually written to be resized on, let's say, a desktop PC.
Yeah, and there's no reason why a game like Domino's shouldn't be, resizable and scalable. And there's a lot of ways to attack that. So I think that's maybe that helps a little bit. Again, the
Maybe
only
it
other
doesn't. If not,
yeah.
drop something on Stack Overflow and
Ian will get some
ping
more
us
points.
through G Plus, and we'll
Exactly.
we'll do the work.
Ian needs some more reps, so he'll
Big
be there,
time.
and so do I actually. But
anything else on the Engineer Dan?
Yeah, so this is the last question. One of our users wants to know if we have any guidelines on dealing with performance variety between devices, because the filtering only handles GPU and screen size.
That is the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
So yeah, there actually is. It doesn't really handle GPU. It handles OpenGLES version, and it doesn't really
format.
It handles texture format,
which is a sort of proxy for GPU, but not a very good one.
So today there's kind of two things. There's two low-hanging fruit that you can use. One is, of course, you can say whether or not you're actually using OpenGLES 2. Check that. The second thing and make sure that you're actually filtering on OpenGLES 2.
Right.
The second thing you can do is to make sure this is sort of a bad option for a lot of games, but if you're only using Dalvik, but the vast majority of performance-bound games are actually using NDK. So make sure to only build an ARM v7a binary and/or MIPS and Intel binary. Like don't target ARM v5. You'll eliminate a lot of low-end devices that way. All right, so now you're in the issue of I've got this super high performance title that I know can only target the top 10% of devices, Galaxy S3s, Galaxy S2s.
Yeah.
And if you're in that position, there is nothing you can do other than to go through and eliminate those devices based upon our compatibility
and let's
list.
talk a little bit about why this is an issue. Okay, remember that Android isn't unique in this. I mean, in the desktop space, this is actually pretty normal. But Android does have actually a couple more GPU vendors than what you'd find in the general desktop space.
Absolutely.
And we often get the question like, well, why don't we just publish some statistics like, what's the fill rate? Well, there's some problems there. First, everybody lies. And those who aren't lying are only not lying because they're bad at something else.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can talk about fill rate, and you can talk about polygon throughput, you can talk about raw vertex shader, you can talk about memory bandwidth, but the truth is, on a GPU, all of these things add up into something that's even only partially the picture, because you also have, not only do you have different bandwidths and different fill rates and different arithmetic unit designs, you also have completely different architectures, the main ones being either tiled or immediate mode.
And there's actually two things. There's tiled deferred mode.
And there's tiled immediate mode, which is sort of a,
And so basically the question you have to ask yourself is, one, how many devices
do you so passed up an opportunity.
Well, yeah.
The question you have to ask yourself is, do you feel lucky, punk?
Exactly.
Well, do you?
So, how many devices do you really want to hit? Today, I think you're going to want to hit a pretty large cross section of devices, but you might be limited because of memory. You might be limited because of just raw GPU power. Today on Google Play, if you're really limited by those things, and my advice to everyone is try to target as broad as possible. If you're running a 3D game, you're gonna have a MIP map with different versions of a texture for things that are in the distance typically. Take advantage of that. Use different MIP map levels on different devices.
You want to use a MIP bias? Okay.
I can see that.
I will say, I don't think there's anybody that's terrible at vertex performance.
Yeah.
So you can think in terms of you want to have a certain number of vertices, and you can cut off like this year's or last year's devices. I don't actually think there's even been that much progress in this, but fill rate wise, what's the right thing to do? Well, Dan's got a good idea. I mean, if you're bound by input doing emit bias would definitely reduce the amount of memory the GPU is consuming.
Yeah,
it
that's
doesn't reduce the amount the GPU is producing, which
correct.
is where you would reduce your frame buffer size.
So the second thing you can do, if you're really targeting, and we know a lot of developers don't do this, and I think it's partially because they don't know. It's kind of hidden, but one thing that you as a developer can do if you're using OpenGL is you can actually set the size of your viewport in our windowing system. So not even in OpenGL. And we actually offer this sort of hidden API, which is inside of Surface Holder, called set fixed size. And if you do that, it'll actually automatically scale your viewport up to the size of your window. So it's actually very, very useful. Literally, and that's done inside of Surface Flinger. And it may even be done with a hardware composer. So it may. So for a lot of reasons, we definitely recommend doing that. Especially if your choices are rendering to a pixel buffer or actually rendering to using this, you should definitely use this. You're going to get more performance. A lot of times when things are really just heavily fill limited, that's what you should do. Obviously, there's shader effects. There's other things you can do. But my general advice on Android is try to make things scalable. Try not to cut off users if you absolutely can avoid it. You want as many users as possible to see your game.
Give yourself some knobs so that you can make adjustments. Don't necessarily expose those to the users, but
Well, one of my favorite games that does this is Dead Trigger. I mean, like Dead Trigger has a slider, and a lot of GPUs, it'll detect and it'll say you're guaranteed to work at the lowest quality only, but you can slide it over, and you can say and turn on effects, and you can see what happens. And sometimes it may just crash the game. When you actually try to run the game with everything turned on, but at least the user knows I turned on those effects, it's crashing. That's not good for every developer. Some developers are like, I never want users to ever see my title crash. I much prefer being given the option of saying, let's try turning it up and seeing what happens. And they do a whole bunch of techniques. They actually don't even use resolution in that slider. They're simply turning off effects. They're changing. It's almost all turning off effects. Actually.
Well, remember the things that are going to be
texture
right?
quality.
Yeah, I mean,
they're changing.
You're going to have texture fetches are going to be a big deal. On many GPUs, especially many tilers, state changes are going to be a big deal. On forward renderers, Tegra is the best example of this. Your geometry sorting is going to be a big deal.
You want to take advantage of early Z rejection on Tegra. It's absolutely critical. The number of games that we look at that draw in the reverse order and end up getting really slow performance. I mean, people are like, wow, this game is amazing on Nexus 7. And they look at the next game and they say, well, this isn't very good. And the reason why often is that the developer hasn't taken the time to design. There's kind of two things: design artwork and also make sure that they're doing draw order that allows for early Z to really take best advantage of the hardware.
Now remember that all of the GPU manufacturers want games to look great on their particular chipset, and they all have armies of people that want to help games look better on that chipset. So if you're having specific problems, contact NVIDIA, contact Qualcomm, contact Imagination Technologies. Get some help.
Contact ARM. Yeah,
contact ARM. Any of these, and get some help, because a lot of times it's just a matter of rewriting a shader or changing your draw order around. And don't forget that all of them have really great tools for investigating what your draw calls are doing.
I mean, PerfHUD, the Adreno Profiler, the PVR Trace, all of these tools are really, really helpful. And the best part for me, the exciting part, is that a lot of them now work on non-rooted devices. So you can even, your consumer devices, you can plug them right in. PerfHUD works that way. Adreno Profiler works that way. PVR Tune is slowly getting there. I mean, the thing with PVR is that you'll run into weird, goofy performance bugs with PVR, like things that you just don't expect because it does all of these crazy optimizations for you, and you do one thing that trips it up and says, oh crap, I have to render everything now, and all of a sudden your performance clips.
I definitely wouldn't limit that to PVR.
No,
everybody does that.
Everyone does that, but PVR, because it does so many optimizations, you may be shocked that one little operation you do causes things to suddenly slow down by orders of magnitude.
Right. Well, remember Wind Up Night, and they fell over the performance cliff.
Exactly, on ARM Mali, because that was a driver bug in that particular case. Where
you never know what's going to happen.
Where
all of these are different.
Absolutely. Where large VBOs, which normally help performance, actually hurt them. So yeah, absolutely.
So there are some general best practices, but if you really, really want to push the envelope, then you need to actually purchase some of these units, talk to the manufacturers, and tune for each type of GPU. But remember, there's not that many. There's the Tegra series, the Adreno, the ARM Mali, and the PVR.
Yeah, and
there are a couple others, but we don't,
There's not, those are the ones that have volume. I mean, you can also
in terms of gaming.
In terms of gaming volume, I mean, certainly you can go and grab Broadcom devices. The Galaxy Y uses that. You can grab a Raspberry Pi if you want to play with the Broadcom device. And then there's also some devices that are now using the Marvell, which is the Vivante accelerator. The new CoStar from Vizio uses that. So there are a few, but again, the vast majority of your phones and tablets are out there.
We love all of our devices here at Android, but there are a few that are made for gaming and some that aren't. So the top 4 you really need to look at. The others, it depends on how broad you want your audience to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if we're talking about bleeding edge performance, ultimately you might end up being in a position where you're actually going to have to target the game individually to different devices. We really like to avoid that. My general guideline is do as much as you can to try to make sure the game is playable in some form. So.
All right. Well, we are coming up on an hour now, and I think we are just about done. And engineer Dan wants to get back to his life, and we're out of beer. So,
oh crap,
we're gonna call it a day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was great having you with us. Thanks very much for tuning in. We will be back next week. We are playing with the format of this show because we started out as a review show. We wanted to introduce some games that we hadn't seen before. And now we kind of feel like maybe we'd rather do a little bit more engineering. It's always been a developer-focused show. And we're thinking maybe we'd like to do a deep dive on some games that have performance problems or design problems. So let us know what you'd like to think. Of course, you can always contact us on the Android Developers Google Plus page. Or if you want to send us a personal message on G Plus too, we may actually see that.
Yeah,
you never know.
Absolutely. It happens.
And with that, let's go ahead and have little Android play us out.
Yeah, and definitely continue to nominate applications you're interested in. Saying, and you can even say, look, this application would be just awesome if it performed better. That's great. We'll take a look at it. We'll try to figure out why it doesn't perform faster. So, again, let us know what you want to do, what you want to see. This is your show.
No,
it is.
It's kind of your show now.
Yeah, it is. There's a moderator page. Continue to nominate things you want to see on the show, and have a great weekend, everyone.
That's right. Come on, little Android. Little Android.
Little Android.